What is up, guys? Well, I am in Austin, Texas, attending the Fantastic Fest of 2024, and one of the premieres that we got yesterday was Apartment 7A, the Rosemary's Baby prequel that is going to be coming to Paramount Plus very shortly. And this is a movie that I really didn't know what to expect. Now, Rosemary's Baby, I am extremely late to the party on. Yes, as a horror fan, there's no excuse, I know. There's just some of those movies that I have been dragging my ass on, and this was one of them. But a couple of days before the festival started, I watched it for the first time. Definitely enjoyed it. That might be a review that I do in the future. But not only just to prep myself for Apartment 7A, but because that's something I need to cross off the list to be able to call myself a horror fan. Anyway, Apartment 7A being a prequel to that film gives me the same pause that it probably gives every other person that hears it. A prequel to a classic horror film that's going straight to a streaming service. More times than not, that doesn't exactly work out in the favor of the audience. Even at last year's Fantastic Fest, the movie that had the same exact set of circumstances, a Paramount Plus film prequel to a classic horror film that they primed us with a little goodie bag right before we watched the movie, was Pet Sematary Bloodlines. And I wasn't a fan of that one. So I walked into this one with a good bit of skepticism, but the fact that I was equally, if not more, skeptical of The First Omen, which I ended up really enjoying, made me try to be a little bit more optimistic about this one. Maybe there's going to be some really interesting things they do here that gives more context to the Brantford building, more context to the older couple. Maybe they're going to add some things in there that kind of twists and modify some of the events of the original film. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be some merit here. And so the basic premise of this film is essentially giving you all of the origin for the woman who jumps out of the window in the original Rosemary's Baby, the woman that is essentially the event that kicks off that entire film. How did she get into that building? Who was she? What was her relationship with the Castevets? And what led her to jump out of that window? That is the answers that we are trying to get in this film. Let me ask you something. Do you also, like Terry and Rosemary after her, have a really strange but overbearing neighbor that likes to weasel their way into friendly, uncomfortable conversations by providing you with hot meals that you didn't ask for? Well, it sounds like an easy solution is getting a much easier and efficient way to get dinner on the table yourself, like with the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. Now that summertime's in the rearview mirror and the school year has started yet again, we are back to busy schedules and constant life changes. Speaking for myself, one of the first issues is finding time to grocery shop, plan dinners, and if I do find time to do all that, usually I get into a routine of making the same meals over and over. Well, HelloFresh is America's #1 meal service because they have something for everybody and they let you customize your delivery from week to week. Mix and match lifestyle options to suit your needs like fit and wholesome, family friendly, quick and easy, and even vegetarian. You can also adjust your delivery dates or even skip a week if you're not going to be at home able to cook. And HelloFresh not only saves you time, but saves you money by including pre-portioned ingredients so that you only pay for what you need. Just open the pre-packed meals and follow the included instruction sheets, and in no time, you have a wholesome meal for you and your family that you didn't have to plan or shop for. And to sweeten the deal, HelloFresh is helping you kickstart a new school year with free breakfast for life. When you join HelloFresh, you'll get a free breakfast item packed in with your box for as long as your subscription is active. So if you're ready to take the stress out of dinner time, go to the link in the video description below and use my code CODY SEP10 and receive 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. One free breakfast item per box while subscription is active if you're in the US. The link and code are valid in all countries and the respective local discount will apply. And thank you so much to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. So starting off with the positives for Apartment 7A, I will say that this movie was better than I thought it was going to be. And the main thing that it has going for it is the performances. You have Julia Garner here as Terry, the main character. She's a dancer that's kind of down on her luck, who's struggling, trying to break out, and she gets befriended by the Castevets, and suddenly through her relationship with the Castevets, she starts to get a leg up on everybody. She starts to get all these little things that she wants, and very much seducing her into their world, into their community, if you will. And she does a fantastic job as the lead of this movie, as somebody that you root for, you sympathize for, and you fear for as the movie goes on. But the standout for me, the thing that I loved the most about this movie, is Diane Wiest's performance as Minnie. And Minnie is one of those characters that is so specific and is such a standout and is a very loud character in every sense of the word in the original film that that is a very difficult character to try to recreate without slipping into some form of parody. From the way that she talks, from her overbearing nature, from the very subtle humor that is thrown in there, it's a very difficult character to find the right balance. And I think that Diane Wiest did a fantastic job. Not only is she the standout of the movie as far as just her acting ability, but she is damn funny in this movie. Like, there are so many lines, whether it's intended to be funny or it's just darkly humorous, that she utters that was the best part of the film. So no matter what your reservations are for this film, and no matter what I'm going to get into in regard to my negatives, I would say to check this out for her performance alone. Natalie Erica James is the director here as well as the co-writer, and I would say you could see her passion for the original film on screen. I think she does a really good job, especially with the dance sequences and some of the more dreamlike sequences that go on in this film. Those are the most standout sequences with visuals and the choreography and how things are blocked out and everything, in my opinion. And so the fact that you could tell she's passionate about this story and tries to find ways to add things to this lore, to these characters that she clearly has a passion for, that came through for me. And along those same lines, I think she does a really good job at recreating the look and the aesthetic of 1968, recreating what the Bramford looked like, recreating how the style of people's clothes and the different parties that they have, and even just how New York looked at that time, I thought was done very well. And anytime a director can effectively recreate an era without having very obvious flubs on screen, I always find that to be impressive. There's a lot of attention to detail at play with that they did a good job with. And the final thing that I'll say about this film, which is not necessarily going to sound like a positive, but it's just more of a reassuring thing for me. This is not a film that I could see offending many Rosemary's Baby fans. There's going to be a number of people that don't care much for it or don't really see the value in what it brings, but this is not a prequel that I think does anything to harm the original film, and that is something that is absolutely a concern, especially when you're dealing with a classic. You know, it adds some context, some details that for the most part you could come up with yourself, which we'll get into, but there's nothing that is explained here or brought into the lore or given as an answer that is frustrating for me. The integrity of the original Rosemary's Baby is not diluted, it is not affected whatsoever by this film, and I do think that is worth stating. Moving on to the mixed, it's not necessarily this movie's fault, but this is the third film in the calendar year of 2024 about a woman pregnant with the devil's baby. I mean, we had Immaculate, just a couple weeks after that we had The First Omen, now we have Apartment 7A, and unfortunately for Apartment 7A, it is the last film that we are seeing, and so I do think the overall concept of this movie might be a bit old, might be a bit tiresome for those of us that have seen the previous two, which is most horror fans. So it's, again, not the movie's fault, but it feels like I've seen this movie before because I've seen two versions of it just a few months ago. And now moving on to the negatives. And one that is on the smaller end is that I felt like Jim Sturgis's performance was about as subtle as a brick in the face. Like, this is a guy that from the moment he walks on screen, you're like, oh yeah, this dude's evil as fuck. And that wouldn't be as much of a problem if he wasn't supposed to be the character that is essentially seducing Terry into this situation, into this world. Like, he's somebody that is kind of supposed to be not necessarily a love interest, but certainly a position of power that she wants to appeal to get what she wants within this Broadway show as her career as a dancer. He's somebody that she certainly wants to be close with for various reasons. And he just always gives off this, I'm a very fucked up person and I have a lot of very fucked up intentions for you vibe that is not hidden whatsoever. And so if it was just a bit more subtle, I would have latched into more of just that old school position of power, quid pro quo thing that they were going for with him, and not so much a guy that has very clearly got nefarious intentions. Which then directly leads right into the next biggest issue with the film, which is that all of the reveals here have the subtlety of a brick to the face. Like, none of them feel like these organic discoveries. They feel like things that are just loudly screaming out to the main character what is going on and to the audience as an extension of that. And it just, every single one felt like, could we not have found a better way to do this? Like, there is literally a scene in the movie where she opens up a book, and on one page is the necklace that she is wearing, same necklace from the first film, showing her that this is some kind of demonic, satanic ties to this. And on the very next page is an illustration of a pregnant woman giving birth to a demon. And it's just like, oh, well, not much room for interpretation there, is there? The original film, one of the best qualities of it is that it really takes its time at slowly and meticulously putting this information in front of Rosemary and the audience and slowly piecing these things together and doing it in a way where all the way up to the final reel of the movie, you still don't completely know if you buy into all of this. Like, there's just enough doubt in there. There's just enough ambiguity in this information and in these details where it's just as plausible that Rosemary is stumbling upon this satanic cult as it is that she is just losing her mind and she's having some really whacked out version of postpartum depression. And so it's just much better done when you can subtly bring those details together and organically bring those details together versus like shouting through a megaphone at the main character and the audience, which I felt this movie did numerous times. But the biggest issue with the movie is that it really is a prequel that functions more as a loose remake. It is essentially the same exact plot. You have the Castovets that are trying to have this young girl be the carrier, the mother of Satan's baby. And they use the same exact trickery, the same exact indoctrination techniques as they do in the original film. You see a lot of the same characters pop up. And so if you have seen the original, you know exactly where things are going because it's almost beat for beat the same story with the exception of the dancing career. And because you know exactly the journey that we're going on, you know exactly beat for beat what's going to happen, and because it's a prequel about a character that we already know her fate, you know exactly where things are going to end. And that leaves no room for tension. It leaves no room for surprise. It leaves little room to really get invested in this character or this story because you already know where things are going to go, which is always my biggest issue with, prequels in general, but even more so horror prequels. When you're going to give me the context for something that I already know where things are going to go, you have to pull some surprises out. You have to twist things around. You have to give me some information there that I did not have before or I could not come up with by myself, or something that recontextualizes some information that I thought that I knew about the first film in a cool way. And this just doesn't do any of that. It just gives you exactly the series of events that you could have assumed by the end of watching the original Rosemary's Baby. Like, is there anybody that watched that didn't go back and look at the death of Terry in the first act of the film and not immediately fill in the details of what probably happened? That's the biggest issue with the movie. Very competently made, a lot of great performances here. You see the passion on screen, but the story just doesn't really bring anything that really merits its existence beyond just being a satisfactory, fine experience in the world of Rosemary's Baby. So overall, I would encourage you to check this out if you're a fan of the original, just if nothing else to revisit this world and these characters, and especially Diane Weist's character, and see what she can bring to this. I do think that she has a lot of fun here and I had fun watching her, but just don't walk in expecting anything really interesting to be done with the narrative that's going to be anything beyond what you could have assumed yourself, because that's exactly what it is, a story that we could have assumed ourselves. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my 2024 reviews. I am also going to stick my review up here. I'll stick the playlist for all of the reviews I've done for Fantastic Fest 2024 so far. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss everything that I cover in the future of this festival. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.